Welcome to Mysteries, Monsters, and Mayhem.
I'm Shannon Lawrence.
And I'm MB Partlow.
Quick content warning before we get started. This podcast may contain language and disturbing content, so enter at your own risk. Hi.
Hello, and welcome to Season 6.
Bienvenue. I don't even actually know if that means welcome.
Yes, that whole... Madeline Kahn says it in Blazing Saddles.
Oh, does she?
She says,
Welcome!
Yeah, and then she goes on and does like 3 or 4 more.
Those are the ones I know. I don't even know how to say, I know how to say you're welcome to thank you in Spanish, but I don't know how to say like you're welcome here. So
I have no idea.
I have to think about that.
But you know how to say that dead people need new pants.
I do. And also, what was the one I posted this week? There are no signs of life. I was like, really? You guys are great. I love it. There's some dark people in there.
There are.
Because that's not the first dark one I've had come through on that one.
No, because you post them occasionally. And I keep saying, I'm going to go on Duolingo and learn Spanish. That's as far as I've gotten, is saying that I'm going to do it. So I now put it out there.
All right.
I'm going to do it.
Are you going to learn Spanish? Is that what you said?
Yes.
You want to learn another language? What languages did your girls learn?
French.
Yeah, that's what Savannah did too. And Gabriel did German, which I like German. I know some German, but...
Well, and I took French in high school, so I remember a little bit of it. And I have had the eldest say to me, you were right. I should have taken Spanish.
Why?
There aren't a lot of French-speaking people in this
No,
country.
that was why I took Spanish. I was like, I live in California.
Exactly.
Or, sorry, Colorado, but I was born in California. I lived in Oregon. The only place I didn't have to deal much with Spanish speakers, and I still did because it was a melting pot, right, was Maryland. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I was like, I'm just going to go ahead and take Spanish. And also, I already knew some from being a kid.
I will say, though, thing two, when she was in college, went to Morocco. Mm-hmm. And... she did use on a class trip. I think it was like the Arab United Nations. That's not what it was called at all. But her French served her well there.
Well, yeah, there's several countries now. Mm-hmm. Because the French are colonizers too. Let's just shorten that conversation. And therefore there are countries and islands that you will go to that there's French there. So
that's why they call it French Polynesia.
Yep.
Yep.
So it does come in handy some places. Mm-hmm. The Spanish were colonizers, like big time. So
yes,
that
definitely.
works a bunch of places. I'm like, where all can I go? Like I still haven't looked into like the history of the Philippines and why they share words with Spanish.
I do not know.
I don't either. But I noticed that it's not all Spanish. No. So like I'm like, huh. What is this mix here? And I keep meaning to look it up. And, in all my spare time.
Yes, which
my oodles and oodles of spare time. So I keep telling, I'm like, oh, I need to do such and such. I'm like, I'll add that to my list for my spare time. Mm-hmm. Whenever it comes up.
I make a list every Sunday of stuff I need to do in the coming week.
I was doing that well for a while, especially with the work. Because I'm like, don't forget these things next week because I can't, since I'm part-time, I can't work more than 30 hours. So I slam into that 30 hours and I'm like, fuck, I still have so much I need to do. And then gone. And then some weeks it's like, this is a slow week. But then that's when I do all my organizing.
Oh, that's very satisfying sometimes.
Yeah, so we're in the middle of graduation for my eldest. So we were talking about, he was invited to an award ceremony. And so this was invite only the kids that got awards, which is better, I guess, than having it at the graduation ceremony because that would suck because those are already like 20 hours long.
I'm
not looking forward to that at all. I was bored at mine, but yeah. But so we went to this award ceremony and it kind of it's bothered me throughout his time and it's bothered him how much they push college. Mm-hmm. Like it's the only option, even though they have a vocational program there and that's great, but it's still like, but you have good grades. You should go to college. You have great SAT. He scored really high on his SATs and ACTs, higher than I did. And you should go to college. And he's like, and so it just, the more they do, the more something is pushed on him, the less he wants to do. That's how it's worked. It's why he stopped reading for a while.
I can't imagine where he gets it from.
I know. Stubborn. That is exactly how I am. But
I couldn't even say that without laughing.
But yeah, so they're giving out the awards, and I liked how they did it because like it wasn't like, oh, you know how you go to some awards and they will give out one award at a time.
Ugh,
right?
Yeah.
No, they called everybody up alphabetically and they announced their awards.
Oh, I like that.
That was great.
Yes.
When I saw it the other day, I was like, oh, thank goodness. But they are also announcing all the scholarships that they'd been awarded from various places and then where they were going to school. And I was like, it still disturbs me, the emphasis on it, especially considering how out of reach college is cost-wise at this point. And so, at least my child wasn't the only one where they said, he is taking a gap year. Mm-hmm. But here I was sitting there, I was more interested in the trades because like one girl came up and got her awards and she had like all these honors and stuff. And they were like, she will be training to be a tattoo artist. And I'm like, yeah, girl, that's great. Girl. And somebody was going to be apprenticing at their family's like industrial type job, whatever it was, carpenter or something. I don't remember. And somebody was going to be learning mountaineering and survival or something in New Zealand. And I was like, oh my God, it was so cool.
That's kind of incredible.
And right? And then I was like, ooh, I wonder if you go out there for college to New Zealand, do you have an in to become a citizen? Because it is so hard to become a citizen in New Zealand. Just like I think Sweden is hard because you have to prove that you're bringing value to them.
Yes.
And, which is funny, we can acknowledge that other countries actually are way pickier and then still be mad that we're trying to make it harder, but we're specifically trying to make it harder for brown people, and I think that's possibly different. Maybe it's not.
It's like Hawaiians. If you're coming there to work, they're much more welcoming than if you just
retiring there,
filthy rich, and you're retiring there, or you're filthy rich and you're buying up all the real estate. There was an article in the New York Times this morning. Name dropping the New York Times. Hey, I got a Sunday subscription. It was my treat for myself. Talking about all the people who have moved, native Hawaiians who've moved to Las Vegas. Ew. Right? I'm like, could you get more opposite?
Yeah.
It's because, well, now there's a huge population there.
Yeah.
But it's because they can afford housing. That's the basic reason. Job opportunities, and they can afford housing.
I feel like all that's in Texas, and it's warmer and more laid back. But it's also Texas.
But it's Texas.
But Vegas. Honestly, if I had to choose between the two, oh my God. First of all, that would suck if I had to choose between the two. But second of all, I think I'd choose Texas. There are all kinds of different... I could live at the beach in Texas. I can live in the middle of the woods.
You can live in eastern Texas.
Yeah, it's the middle of the woods.
Yes.
Hickville's probably not the best place I want to go if I'm avoiding it for being Texas-y, though.
True.
Well, a friend of mine moved to San Antonio, and she really likes it there. But that's kind of like an artsy type city.
Yes.
And like they can just go to a lake and swim in it, unlike here in Colorado.
And unlike Florida, you can't swim in the lakes. In Florida, they all have alligators in them.
Yeah.
Or they have they have a very strong potential. But the high school that your children are in, well, one is done, but is the same one that my kids went to. And I was so appalled to learn when my girls were there, they had a great math course, but they would not offer it to you unless you like flunked out of every other math course. Do you know what it was? It was like a consumer math course. It was how to balance a checkbook, how to figure...
Which should have just been a required...
Yes, how to figure interest on a loan, the difference between credit cards and cash. It was all this super practical stuff. But they would not offer it to college bound. Because if you were college bound, you were supposed to be taking AP, what the fuck ever.
Like I took freaking pre-calc and I hated math. I should have just stopped. If I'd stopped right before pre-calc, I think that would have been trigonometry, if I remember right. Yeah. That was what I took before that. Life would have been so much better. I didn't need fucking pre-calc. But I still thought I was college bound at that point, and I thought it would look good.
Who
First
knows?
test I ever failed.
Who knows what colleges even look for anymore?
Oh, God. Like, some of the kids, they would also run through, like, and here's their volunteerism they've done, and here's all of this that they've done. And I was like, okay, well, that child didn't have a life through high school, and that sucks. Mm-hmm. At what point are they going to have a life then? Because it seems to me if they're running at that level, they're going to keep running at that level.
Or they're going to burn out and crash and burn.
Right. Which I did already because I was, but so I was talking to Jeff, I'm like, so many feelings have come up with my son graduating high school because mine was very complicated. And there were complicated things. My high school years were complicated for reasons that I'm not going to. So yeah, like a lot of feelings bubbling to the surface with this. And talking to my husband, he was in even a worse situation. Like we were both working. We had to work. He was taking care of a disabled father. Like our school years weren't carefree, I guess.
It's odd.
So it's weird facing that now.
It is. It's a stupid example, but accurate. There's a sitcom, The Connors. Yeah. It used to be Roseanne. Now it's The Connors because that character died off.
Because reasons.
Yes, because reasons. So one of Dan and Roseanne's grandchildren was graduating from high school. And one person, and Dan's new wife said, I will, you're all really busy. I will plan the party. So one person would come up to her and go, oh my God, we have to have this. Somebody else would say, oh my God, we have to have this. Somebody else said, oh my God, we have to have this. She was just like, you're all driving me fucking nuts. What is your problem? So as it finally turned out, everybody had a really, let's go with complicated.
Well, because the whole thing with the Connors is that they were low income.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm sure a lot of,
Like, so Roseanne, her parents didn't go to her graduation because they were working.
My dad couldn't come to my graduation.
I can't remember what Jackie's was, but Becky dropped out and ran away with Mark. And so she got her GED. So she never had that,
So they were all living through.
Through poor, I want to say Mark is the character. But yeah, and it's funny how you don't realize this until all of a sudden it's
in your face.
Yeah, and you're like, what is this vileness bubbling out of me?
What is this weird chip on my shoulder I didn't even know I had?
Yes.
Yeah, I really didn't. And then all of this and like the graduation parties and all this stuff. And I'm like, my parents didn't even live here anymore. I didn't have a graduation. Nobody gave me money for graduating. Nobody was like, here is $20. And and then I got married that summer and all of that. And I got mostly stupid ass gifts from people because they didn't take it seriously. And I was like, you understand that an 18-year-old and a 19-year-old getting married needed the real things more than the grown-ass fucking adults who are usually combining two households and had it. So it was just all stupid. And it was people being stupid because we were young. So it's weird. I'm like, maybe I'll work through it all this time, and then when Savannah gets to graduation.
Now, adults, or the adults in your life should have known better. I'm thinking if you had people your own age giving you ridiculous presents, they didn't know any better. Yeah. But the adults should have been like, oh no, let's give them towels. Let's give them
and also, it's not like money. I had any rich people, because I don't have any rich people in my family. But it's not that. It's not the money. Like, one of the things that was most sensible I got, the two most sensible things I got were a crock pot and a coffee maker. Mm-hmm. Now, neither of us drank coffee, but I kept that coffee maker forever, and I still had it up until a year ago, and that bitch was still working. Because I would use it for tea sometimes when I didn't have a kettle, because I would just have it run through the hot water and then use that for my tea and all kinds of things.
Why did you get rid of it?
Because it was taking up space, and I was like, you know what? Let's put this at the Ark, and maybe somebody who needs this as a starter coffee machine. It was still in really good shape because they didn't drink coffee, right? But. Or when I did it was special. I didn't drink coffee in the mornings. It just never was my thing. I didn't need coffee to wake up. I have ADHD. I don't need coffee to wake up. But actually, what I was doing is, like, in high school, my habit became I would take an apple and a Coke for breakfast to school, because even then I couldn't eat something right away. I have to be awake for a while to eat something. And even now, it can only be like this smoothie that I make. Otherwise, my stomach's upset all day.
Well, it's like I don't need tea to wake up. I need the amount of time it takes me to make and drink a cup of tea with nobody fucking talking to me.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's a routine. It's like a special, and I get up, it's because I get up at the last minute that I have to, because I'm going to lose however much sleep, right? And so I get up and I instantly have to get into the day. There is I have done I would get dressed fully and brush my teeth and do all that stuff before I leave my bedroom. I'm ready for the day when I leave my bedroom. Then I come downstairs, make my smoothie, sit down on my computer, get to work. So really I keep trying to build in, like, I'm going to go outside and do yoga on the back porch before I do it. And then I do it really well for like a week or two. Actually, I had it down last year, and then as soon as it got cold and I couldn't do it anymore, it was gone.
I did that. I had that routine when we both worked for Kicker. Because I worked the early shift. So I would get up, make a smoothie, go downstairs. Now, except for the getting dressed part. But sometimes I would be like, I'm going to take a 5-minute break and instead of pajamas, I will be wearing sweats.
Well, and you already know I have the rule. I have to get dressed every day because I do that for the depression.
Yes.
Because I feel like if I sit in my pajamas all day, it's going to kind of feed into the depression stuff.
Yep.
But yeah, actually, when I started at Kicker Doc, I was starting work at 9 or 10 a.m. Before you started there. And then that's when I went on Zoloft, and it fucked my circadian rhythms completely. And then I got later and later and later. I keep hoping that things will reset back to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Keep trying. It does not work yet, but we'll see. All right. Let's get started.
All right, you start this time.
Also, we should welcome you to season 6. We did not say goodbye to you from season 5, but since we're not taking a break between seasons, it really doesn't matter. So welcome to season 6. To start off season 6, I'm doing the BTK Killer.
Finally.
Also known as the BTK Strangler, also known as blah, 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 but really just BTK. And this is one that I really didn't know a lot about, funnily enough. I'm having problems speaking today. So, good luck and you're welcome. And I never looked at all of his details and stuff, because I think I only really heard of him when we started hearing from him again in 2004, which I'll discuss. So, here we go. In 2004, police and media received letters from a man who called himself BTK, which stood for Bind, Torture, Kill, which was his MO. He'd killed at least 10 individuals in Park City and Wichita, Kansas, taunting officials with letters that unexpectedly stopped in 1991. His victims were typically at least bound by the hands, if not put into further bondage positions. And he supposedly sometimes revived his victims so he could strangle them again. That's from his own admissions. And I will say, this is interesting. When you look up serial killers, they're often all the gory details, and they want to get into the deepest nitty gritty.
Yep.
And I was not seeing that with him, which is interesting. So they barely, nobody even really talked about the bondage things and the torture he did, but that was part of his MO. So I'm not going to pound that drum while I'm going through it either. But for the record, I feel like their deaths end up sounding far simpler than they really were because of it. But at the same time, that's good, because that's them trying not to feed into that ghoulish consumption, I guess. So just know that there was torture involved. I don't know to what extent or how much, and that's fine. Luckily for everyone, his sudden desire for a return to infamy would prove to be his undoing. January 15th, 1974. I'm just going to go through his victims here in order. 3 children returned home from school to find the rest of their family butchered. The Otero's phone line had been cut. The murder victims were 2 young children, Joseph Jr., who was 9 and was suffocated with a plastic bag, Josephine, who was 11 and hanged from a pipe in the basement.
Oh, God.
Yeah. The mom, Julie, who was 33 and was strangled with rope, and the dad, 38 years old, who was obviously named Joseph, because we just had Joseph Jr. Interesting. I'm accustomed to the oldest child being named after the father when they do that, but these were the 2 youngest out of 5. Anyway, as an aside, I don't know if maybe that's normal somewhere else, but then the 2 youngest are named after him. So Joseph was killed by suffocation with a plastic bag, like his son. It would later be related that the killer had entered when one of the kids let their dog out to go pee and used a gun to seduce them. So it was the morning. They were, because I was like 9 and 11 should have been in school, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, they were in lower school than the other 3, and so they hadn't left yet. Okay. They let out the dog, open that back door, and he comes in with a gun.
Because you're trained. You train your kid. When the dog scratches or whines at the back door, you let them out.
Yep. And that was one of the clues to the teens that came home, is their dog was outside still, which solved multiple problems for the killer, didn't it, too? Yeah. It's very handy. He had tried to kill all 4 by suffocation with the bags, but the 2 females hadn't died that way, like the men had. Oh. He actually thought he'd killed Julie, the mom, and then came back because he didn't know for sure if he'd done it, killed her or not, and I don't think he had. And so those 2 got strangled. That's why the different types of death between them. In a hidden blessing, the kids who returned home only found their dead parents in their bedroom, and I'm using only.
Right.
They thought the younger siblings were still at school, so they didn't go look. So at the very least, they did not have to see their 2 younger siblings dead.
Okay.
Not that they weren't insanely traumatized by this entire thing by finding their dead parents in bed, one of them with a black bag over their head, the other one with a ligature, but at least they didn't have to find their
younger
baby siblings. Yeah. April 4th, 1974, a 21-year-old woman named Catherine Bright, she's so cute. In her picture, she's so young looking, came home with her 19-year-old brother. BTK was waiting at their house. He shot Kevin in the head twice and stabbed Catherine 3 times in the abdomen. I don't know why he stabbed instead of his strangling MO. I think that he didn't expect a fight or something, and something happened. She actually died at the hospital because despite Kevin being shot in the head, he survived and he was able to get away. He regretted not being able to save her, but he was able to give a description to the police. And I imagine once he got away, BTK maybe took off without finishing because he probably would have then strangled her because that was his thing. That's how he got off. Mm-hmm. As far as I don't think he was raping any of them. He was getting off. This was his replacement. Right. Because he is still a sexual sadist. That is still his description, but yeah. In October 1974, a man confessed to killing the Oteros and said 2 friends had helped him. So this hit the news, and a phone call came into the local newspaper advising them to go to the Wichita Public Library, and they were told to look up a specific mechanical engineering book. Inside that book was a letter, and it had deep descriptions of the murders to prove that this person had done it, BTK.
Oh, God.
And saying the confessor and his friends were innocent. And saying, you'll know my signature from now on. And this is the first he said, because I will bind them, torture them, and kill them. March 17th, 1977. By the way, false confessors, bad enough and a problem on its own, but then bringing your friends into it and saying they helped you, that's sick. Yeah. Okay, March 17th, 1977. A 5-year-old boy answered a knock on the door. And the man said, I'm a PI, private investigator. Can I come in and talk to your parents? So this little 5-year-old let him in. This is why people in the 80s, we learned
we lock our
children
doors.
You lock your doors, but also children, you don't get to answer the door. You let mom and dad answer the door. So anyway, he got in. BTK actually locked the 5-year-old and his siblings, who were 4 and 8, in a bathroom with like blankets and stuff. It's so he had killed a 9 and 11-year-old already.
I was like, did he?
So why 8 was the limit?
Maybe he made the decision he wasn't going to kill kids anymore.
Maybe it really disturbed him because he did not again. Anyway, he locks them in the bathroom, and they're trying to get out. And he took mom into the bedroom, strangled her with a ligature after he'd bound her. So she was one that was definitely described as being in like a bondage position. And then he placed a plastic bag over her head as well, but the ligature is what killed her. Shirley Vian Relford was 24. One of the children broke out of the bathroom ultimately, but their mother was already dead. They ran to the neighbors and were able to give a description to the police, but the oldest was 8. Yeah. So again, this didn't lead to anybody. December 8th, 1977, the victim was 25-year-old Nancy Fox. She was strangled with a belt, Immediately following her death, BTK called police from a payphone to let them know where her body was. Hey, I killed Nancy Fox. You'll find her here. So they had a recording of his voice now. On January 31st, 1978, an index card with a poem that would turn out to be a parody of the folk song Oh Death arrived at the newspaper, but the person thought it was actually like a love poem, even though it was about him killing somebody. And so they sent it to the classifieds department. So he's watching for his poem to see himself in the news because he really loved attention. And he didn't. So now he's mad. And he wrote
in the Men Seeking Women
right?
poem.
And he got mad and he wrote another letter to the paper asking, what do I have to do to make it into the paper? And he listed a series of names they could call him. He self-named himself. One of them was, of course, the BTK Strangler. He also threw out the Wichita Hangman, the Asphyxiator. Like, who are you, Arnold Schwarzenegger? Like,
yeah, the Asphyxiator.
I actually have a copy, like a picture of that part of that letter, and it has some of the names on the bottom, so I will post that on Instagram. He said he had something called Factor X, which he called a supernatural element. And it caused him to kill, and he compared himself to Jack the Ripper and Ted Bundy and the Hillside Stranglers and said they all had Factor X.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. In June of 1979, a 63-year-old woman named Anna Williams received an envelope in the mail, and it was a poem called Oh, Anna, Why Didn't You Appear? Along with some of her belongings from her home. As it turned out, the BTK had been in her house on April 28th, 1979.
That's creepy.
He had been in her house waiting to kill her, but she was out with friends and ended up being out for longer than expected. So he waited something like 4 hours before giving up and taking off, and that is why she lived.
How fucking creepy to get...
For real. He was like, I'm not letting you off the hook. He was actually there. They said he was kind of obsessed because it had gone so wrong, and so he felt like robbed.
Wow.
August 14th, 1979, authorities made BTK's recorded phone call admitting to killing Nancy Fox public in the hopes that someone would know his voice. Plenty of people called in. None of them actually led to BTK. And sometimes they look back and they're like, oh my God, somebody did call in and say this?
Yeah.
No. April 27th, 1985, a 53-year-old woman named Maureen Hedge was strangled by hand after returning home from a bingo date with her boyfriend. The killer stripped her, wrapped her in a blanket, and took her to his church and photographed her in bondage positions in the church.
That's just sick. I'm like...
I know. And the body was thrown in a ditch where it was found May 5th. And of course, this is information that was found out afterwards when they knew who it was, because then he told them all about it and he had the photos. September 16th, 1986, a 28-year-old woman named Vicky Vagerly was murdered, but not firmly attributed to BTK. She wouldn't be attributed till later. In fact, it was her poor husband who had come home on his lunch break, found his 2-year-old all by himself, and then got into the bathroom and found that his wife had been strangled with a nylon stocking in there, who initially took the blame. It would turn out that for this one, BTK dressed as a telephone repairman to get into the house.
Did the husband go to jail for it?
I don't know. I was going to look it up, and then this was long enough anyway, so I was like, eh. I didn't see that he had. You'd think somebody would have said that, but who knows? Because again, there's really sparse information on him. January 19th, 1991. BTK killed 62-year-old Dolores E. Davis after throwing a brick through her sliding glass door. Like, it's just so... There was no smoothness to this. Like, the dressing like a telephone repairman, saying you're a PI, coming in the back door when they let out the dog.
Yeah. I'm just going to throw a brick through her door.
Yeah, he just straight up... And then he strangled her with pantyhose and moved the body next to a nearby bridge. So he actually removed her from her home and left her somewhere else. I don't know if he took pictures or something. It didn't say he did. She was found February 1st, would be the last of his victims.
Okay.
So the killing stopped, as did the letters. He had been regularly sending in letters to both the media and the police. He loved to taunt the police. He just all sorts of things. Games. There would be so many weird things in there. And I'll go into that more when they resume. Interestingly, a family in Wichita had been murdered in 1988, and BTK had sent a letter saying it wasn't him because it was similar to him. He said, I didn't do it, but I got to say that was some admirable work.
Oh.
Yeah, police believed him as he'd claimed responsibility and openly admitted to all of the other murders, including one with children. Because, sometimes we see they're like, no, I didn't kill the child, but you did.
Because a murderer wouldn't lie to you.
I know, right? But he was so proud of his accomplishments, and he still thought it was amazing what they'd done, but wasn't me. Ew. But then that person didn't kill again. So then I'm like, I kind of wanted to know. I almost went down that, but this was the second one I prepared. And the first one I fell down so many fascinating rabbit holes. I was like, you must not follow the rabbit holes this time, because I finished at like 4:30 in the morning. The silence left police scrambling to find out who had perpetrated the crimes, but they had no luck. Not, that is, until those letters started again. Funnily enough, it appears to have been because of a 30th anniversary of the BTK Killer piece that was run in the Wichita Eagle in January 2004, which stated he's been forgotten. He's pretty much been forgotten. He really had, because again, there's just not information on him like other ones. So, this runs in January. March 2004, first letter gets received. It was signed Bill Thomas Kilman. What are those initials? BTK. And included crime scene photos of Vicky Wegerly, as well as a scan of her driver's license, which had not been at the scene. It had been stolen, because trophy. Luckily, police had DNA from under her fingernails. And they had kept it.
Good.
So they ended up testing over 1,300 men, and at that point, none of them were the guy. But they still had that DNA, though.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because DNA testing.
And the funny thing is, they were confused because he didn't sign it the same as he used to.
Right.
But he did the Bill Thomas. I feel like he just forgot how he used to sign them. I've done 1 week apart, and I will forget. I usually do this way, don't I? So, that's many years. KAKE got another letter in May of the same year that included a word puzzle and other random items. With the release of the puzzle at a later date, it would be found that BTK's actual last name was in the poem, along with his house number. But of course, they couldn't know that when it was first sent to them, because they didn't know who'd done it, and so it wasn't a real word. But it was words like prowler and stuff like that in this word puzzle. The sick motherfucker. In June, a picture with the heading, "The Sexual Thrill is My Bill," and a detailed description of the Otero murders were found in a manila folder taped to a stop sign. He had written out suggested chapter headings for a book that should be titled The BTK Story. This man was so thirsty for attention.
Yeah.
In July, a public library worker found a package from BTK in the overnight return slot. It claimed he'd killed a man named Jake Allen, but that death was actually ruled a suicide, and they just didn't believe he'd done it. So,
well,
I was just trying to get that attention again, and he wasn't getting enough attention with just the letters, I guess. In October, a package without an address was found in a UPS box that had cards showing child bondage and other disturbing images, as well as a poem about killing the lead investigator in the case. He did many poems that I haven't mentioned in the previous ones, too. In December, a garbage bag was left in Murdoch Park that held Nancy Fox's license in it, and a bound Barbie doll with a plastic bag on its head, which, of course, was part of his MO. In January 2005, he put a cereal box in the back of a Home Depot employee's pickup truck, but the man found it when he got home and threw it away without opening it. It's like, people always putting trash in the back of my truck, I guess. A postcard received by the police then mentioned the box. How'd you like the box I left at the Home Depot or whatever? And they were actually able to track it down, and the guy still had it in his garbage.
Wow.
So they were able to get that cereal box. And they were able to look at security footage because they knew when it had happened, and they saw the man, but it was so distant because it was at the building and this was out in the parking lot. They couldn't make out any features of the man, but they did see that he drove up in a black Jeep Cherokee.
Okay.
Couldn't get the plates or anything, but that is more information than they'd had. And the thing is, Jeep Cherokees are still a dime a dozen. They're still around, so they held on to the information. Now we've added that to DNA. More packages were left, including another cereal box, this one with a doll bound to a pipe to represent little Josephine Otero.
Aww.
But eventually BTK asked if it would be safe to send in a floppy disk. He said, put this code in the paper, in the classifieds, if it's safe, if it's not traceable. Like, why would the police be like, no, dude, it's traceable? So anyway, the code was Rex. It will be okay. So they put that in the paper. BTK sent in a floppy disk. It was purple. It was one of those little solid floppies with some random other items, including a necklace and a scan of the book cover of John Sanford's Rules of Prey. And John Sanford's books are always about a serial killer, at least the ones that I recall reading. Now, when he'd asked about the safety of the floppy disk, his question was whether it could be traced, and the police said it couldn't. Not as such, right? Like, you can't just trace where this floppy disk came, so they weren't lying. However, experts were able to find metadata.
Of course.
On that disk, because when you delete shit off your computer and off disks and stuff, it's not gone.
It's not.
So they found like a document with Christ Lutheran Church in there.
Oh.
They found that it had been modified by user Dennis, because you know your name's in there and all that good stuff. And all police had to do at that point was look up the church online, and there online was the president of the Christ Lutheran Church Council, Dennis Rader. Guess what vehicle Rader owned? A black Jeep Cherokee. Yes. Based on this information, they were able to get a warrant to this. I don't know how I feel about this, but they found out that his daughter had had an OBGYN appointment, and they were able to get a warrant to get that for DNA testing. Because they didn't have enough to get a warrant to search his house or test him, but they were able to get this warrant to test her DNA, and they compared that with the stuff under Vicky's fingernails.
Right.
And it did show that the killer was closely related to the daughter. Dennis Rader, let's talk about him.
Okay.
He was born March 9th, 1945.
Go ahead.
And had long lived in Wichita. His parents both worked outside the home and had little time for their 4 sons. So while he doesn't have the abusive background and stuff that others found, his big thing, and this makes sense, doesn't it, was he didn't feel he got enough attention.
He was neglected.
He had more anger toward his mom because he felt she should have given it, because of course, because moms, God forbid, they don't take all the blame. And so this was the thing he talked about, being, upset that she just didn't give him enough attention. So of course he was an attention seeker.
Wow.
Yeah. And he had 3 brothers. Rader had been problematic for some time. He was known to torture animals, and he liked to hang cats and watch them suffocate to death. He was fascinated with sexual sadism and autoerotic asphyxiation. He also enjoyed dressing.
Why didn't he practice that?
He did.
Oh.
Yeah. That's my thing, though. Like, all of this, technically, but obviously there was something more. There was something actually, I don't want to say more. There was something actually wrong with him beyond these being how he got off sexually, is that the murder must have been a part of that, which sets him apart from somebody who was just innocently has these particular inclinations, right?
Yes.
Just want to be clear here. There's nothing wrong with these, because again, we don't kink shame.
Nope.
As long as you're not harming others with it against their will. He enjoyed dressing in women's clothing while he spied on female neighbors. Often it was stolen underwear or something like that he was wearing. But I didn't find, was he breaking into their houses and stealing underwear? Was it his mom's? I don't know. Or just stealing it from stores.
I once had my underwear stolen.
Okay.
It was when I was living in North Carolina, and we had a clothesline out back. And it was getting dark, and I ran out, and I quickly pulled all my clothes off and threw them in the basket, brought them in, and then later on, like a couple hours later, I go to put away my clothes, and all of my underwear was gone. It had not been hanging on the line. I didn't notice it when I was pulling it out.
All of it, wow.
It wasn't every pair of
I know, but still, like,
somebody had come through and took all of my underwear. I was mad.
If we didn't kink shame, here's the thing, if we didn't kink shame, it wouldn't be so weird for a man who that's his only thing, right? To buy it, and then he wouldn't have to steal it. Yeah. But when I was a teenager, our house was beside an apartment complex, and I happened to look out the window and see this guy was the maintenance man from the apartments that we'd lived in, by the way, for a while before we moved into that house. And he was walking along, and there were bathing suits hung over some of the balconies at the lower floor because they had a swimming pool. And as I'm looking out the window, he's taking them off the bottoms and smelling them. Oh. And then I was like, Dad. And Dad came over, and he witnessed it, and he ended up calling the apartment complex. And then,
yeah.
But now I look at that, and I'm like, I wonder if that guy started doing worse at some point, because that's one of those beginning things that some of them do. And he was in how many times is the maintenance man, because they have access to people's apartments and stuff. So I don't know what happened, because of course they weren't going to tell us what happened after that. But anyway, disturbing to witness. He would also cut out pictures of women from magazines, glue them to index cards. He really liked index cards.
Yeah.
And draw ropes and gags on them so he could carry the images around with him and get off on it. And again, I'm like, first of all, there's bondage porn, but I guess you have to be able to get your hands on that. And he was from a churchy family and would end up being a churchy man and having his own churchy family. But, there's ways to do this that don't involve killing somebody and that are, I wouldn't say societally accepted, because we're a bunch of fucking prudes, but
it also sounds like he had a little bit of an arts and crafts kink going on.
Just cut these out. From 1974 to 1988, he worked for ADT, a home security company, and that's right through the middle of his killing spree. That's the bulk of it. He installed security systems. And a lot of the people were getting them because of BTK. And the thing is, as far as I know, none of his victims were ADT clients. They did not specifically say that, but that would definitely have been an in. But it's also disturbing to think about. He also briefly had a job as a census taker in 1989, which would have also given him a way for people to open the door, but he wasn't killing them. So, interesting. Well, he briefly was. But anyway, in 1991, he took a job as a dog catcher. This is the second serial killer I've reported on that did that, because how better to get out your torture kink. The thing is, nobody said he was really torturing, nobody turned him for torturing animals as far as I can find, but he was reported for harassing single women he dealt with on that job. And also one woman said that Rader had killed her dog without provocation. So honestly, I think those poor dogs probably I'm wondering if this gave him a way to harm those animals instead of killing women. If he was, I just don't know. That's not in there anywhere.
Speculation.
Yes. But maybe this is why he had that, what they see as a cooling off period. He was still harassing women, but he wasn't killing them. He is admitted to dressing as a woman and putting on a mask to make himself look like a woman and binding himself so he could take pictures and pretend to be one of his victims to get off. I do have one picture, but I don't think I can post it. But because I don't want our Instagram to get shut down again.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's him with a woman mask on, basically. It's just a plastic, simple mask with a woman's face on it and in lingerie. And his legs, I don't know how he set this up alone. They must not really be bound, so he made it look like his arms were bound behind his back. And he's got his feet tied up into the low branch of a tree. So he's hanging there in this a J form almost, with his shoulders on the ground, bound, gagged. And he said, so he was doing stuff like this. And the police did have those pictures because he was taking pictures. And
oh my God, he was probably scrapbooking.
Right? So people can look it up. He did have a ton of Polaroids and stuff like that from, So that one was outdoors. He took some indoors too. And that wasn't the only type of one. It said he wrapped himself in plastic in one. It said he buried himself up to the neck in the ground for one. I'm like, how did he have this much spare time?
I'm puzzled by the mechanics of that one.
I want to know how he got, because his wife and family knew nothing about anything he was doing, obviously.
He was married.
Yeah, I'll get there in a minute.
All right.
As already mentioned, Rader was president of the church council, right? Which was an elected position, but he was also a Cub Scout leader. In fact, an article stated that he left a camping trip in the middle of the night to kill Marine Hedge. I don't know how true that is. That seems pretty crazy.
That's wild.
People felt he was a normal, polite guy with good manners. That's how they described him. I think he came across as pretty dull. He was just a very average person. He couldn't finish college the first time he went, and then he went back and he took a long time and he got his degree over a long period of years, and he was just very average. He was an underachiever in every way when you look at him. Wow. But he was also a father of a boy and a girl. He had a son and a daughter. His son was in Cub Scouts. That's how he ended up being a Cub Scout leader. Somebody was like gleefully pointed out. So he had to teach them how to tie knots.
Oh.
Yep.
Yeah. But...
Yep. This guy that did this to his victims. In the 1980s, 2 women filed restraining orders on him saying he was stalking them. In the 90s, and that he did stalk these people for periods of time before he killed them. In the 90s, another woman had to file a restraining order for the same reason. One of these 3 women actually moved and changed her name to get away from him. And it's good because he probably was stalking them to kill them during that time. He was killing people then. 2 of his first victims, Julie Otero and Catherine Bright, had been his co-workers at Coleman.
Oh.
A camping supply company.
Oh.
Maureen Hedge lived on his street. She was not a direct neighbor, but she lived on his street. Hey, Silence of the Lambs, what do we covet? We covet what we see.
Yep.
He ran across all of these people one way or another. Like one, he said he just happened to be driving by when this woman came home one night, and then he started stalking her, and then he killed her. February 25th, 2005, Rader was arrested. Then his home, church, and place of business were raided by the police, the Kansas Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, and the ATF. Police announced they'd arrested BTK to the press. The thing is that they followed him. He had like this train of cars, and then they arrested him. And on the way there, when I was like, "Do you know why you're being taken downtown?" And he said, "Oh, I have a good idea." Yeah.
Because churches really
he finally got his attention.
Yes, churches really I mean, any business would, but churches really love it when the...
Oh, they'll just pretend it didn't happen.
Well.
Probably if he'd been let out, they would have just moved to another church, because that's what they do with the pedophiles. Sorry. He was charged with 10 counts of... I'm not wrong.
No.
10 counts of first-degree murder. At first, his attorney pled him innocent. Not guilty. But on June 27th, at his trial, he admitted to everything and described the murders. He wanted that attention so fucking bad. Families of the victims read their impact statements on August 18th. Dennis Rader apologized, but did so in a long speech that was compared to an Academy Awards acceptance speech. I did not find the transcript of that. I think I'd like to. Then I'll hate him more. He received 10 consecutive life sentences, as there was no death sentence at the time the murders occurred. So you cannot, even though there was when he was tried, you cannot issue that punishment if it didn't exist while they were there.
Right.
He lives in solitary confinement to protect him from other inmates.
Why?
Jeffrey Dahmer.
I'm like...
Yeah. Police in neighboring states and in the areas in which he was sentenced in the areas in which he served when he was in the Air Force, which I didn't mention. I mean, he had a bunch of jobs they mentioned. I wanted to mention the ones that were freaky to me because they put him in contact with people in their homes. But he did serve a brief stint in the Air Force. So these cops, including Colorado, because everybody comes through Colorado except for apparently Dennis Rader. All these cops and people in the areas where he was in the Air Force checked to see if there was anything with his MO in that area. They did not find anything additional. So they do believe that he has come clean and admitted to all of the crimes he committed and that he just simply had these cooling off periods, because there's a big gap between his first and the next ones too. He did say he had stalked others with the intention of killing them, but many had gotten lucky. He said there are a lot of lucky people out there, was the quote. For various reasons. So we, of course, know the one who he was pissed off about missing. So I wonder if she's the first one he missed or what. Or he was just real excited about her. I don't know. But in another instance, he was on his way to kill this woman he'd been stalking. And there were construction crews like on her street. So he didn't end up killing her. We don't have her name or anything like that. But that was just one example of many. He was found to have OCD, which I was like, maybe that's the index card thing. Like, maybe that's why everything, like, so often, because there were other things that were on index cards, and I didn't bother putting, I was like, that's not that important a detail, honestly. Narcissism, obviously, an antisocial personality disorder, and he was found to have zero empathy, obviously. His wife was granted an emergency divorce on July 26, 2005, after her husband was arrested. Usually there's a waiting period, and they were like, okay, nope, he's BTK, you're out. His daughter has spoken publicly about him, which actually ended up with Rader and his fans, yes, he has fans, harassing her. She had referred to him as a psychopath, and that pissed him off and other people, and she had cut off ties with him. So I don't know where she is with it now, Because one thing said, oh, she still writes to him, and she said that she's forgiven him, and I'm like, okay, but which one of these is the last one?
Yeah.
I don't know. And his son is never mentioned, so I don't know if the son severed that tie or what. I have no idea. And that's their private business, because it's never the kid's fault that their father is a serial killer. For the record, Stephen King wrote A Good Marriage, at least partially inspired by Rader. That's the one where the husband is secretly a serial killer and the wife starts discovering things in the shop in a little box in his garage or shop or whatever it is, like licenses of women or something, I think.
I had to have read that, but I don't
it's been a long time for me. That's all I remember that stuck out, is because basically she found this trophy thing. So anyway, Rader's daughter did say that she disapproved of Stephen King profiting off of what her father did. And I'm like, but that's not, listen, writers of mystery and horror, a lot of these are inspired by real life things. And
writers of every genre.
Better him than your dad profiting. Now, I do think Rader won a lawsuit against, he was spoken to by some mental health experts, and they released the recordings of the interview.
Oh, no.
Yes. So, and I don't remember what they were, whether they were psychologists or it was like a project and they were also journalists. I don't remember. But he won, they settled for $30,000 with no admission of wrongdoing. They claimed he knew that they were going to release it, but he said he did not, and there was no proof he hadn't signed anything. But then if you get a $30,000 settlement, does that go to your family? That I could not find. Because I don't think you're allowed to make money.
You can't profit from your crime.
It's true, but you can make the...
But he was suing for damages.
Yeah, so he could probably.
But if any of the victims had sued him for damages, that money would just go straight to them.
Yeah. So, anyway, that's BTK. And just to be clear, somebody dressing in women's underwear or cross-dressing or any of the above doesn't make you sick. No. He was already a sick individual and happened to do things other people do.
Yeah.
I just needed... It's such a bad time that I almost didn't do it when I got to that part, because I don't want to give people ammunition that obviously it doesn't actually make sense for them saying everybody is bad who does it. But there you go. Tauruses, biography, Wikipedia, Heavy, Ranker, Oxygen, and CBS News.
Wow. I got in trouble because of what's the K-pop group BTS?
Oh, did you call them Basic and Pizza?
I did. Because I worked with someone who was a huge fan, and we teased her about it because it was ripe for the teasing. But I occasionally I'd be like, yeah, what's new for BTK? And everybody's like, no, and I'm like, what? Because it wasn't on my consciousness. So.
I mean, but it's been in the subconscious because for a while, in 2004, we were hearing about him constantly. In 2005, just because he was back. And that's exactly what he wanted, exactly what he got. Oh, and by the way, I did forget to say in there that he told them he was already stalking his next victim in 2004. He was going to go back to killing when they found him.
Wow. Well, in a complete switch up, I'm going to talk about cats. Kitties. Kitties! Because that's what we're all about. Kitties. Serial killers and kitties. Cats are the egomaniacal assholes we love to love.
Yeah.
Really, I mean, they are.
And sometimes hate to love.
Yes. So, they definitely fall in the mystery category, and they definitely fall in the mayhem category. Most of the time they're not monsters. I mean, they are in a minor way, but I
think it's funny that dogs end up in romance novels a lot.
Yeah.
And cats end up in mysteries.
Yes. So I just read a mystery with a cat, and I was like, there were a couple of things she was going to do, and I was like, you can't do that and then some other character would go, no, you can't feed your cat XYZ, it's poisonous. Oh. I don't know. I want to say it was something like she was just going to give her cat chocolate. It wasn't chocolate, but it was something.
I wonder if she put it in there because it was her way of being like, hey guys, you can also learn what you should not feed cats while you read my book.
Maybe. But the mystery of cats. Why do they barf in our slippers? Why do they barf so much? Does any other animal throw up as much as
I don't think so. Rats? No, rats can't throw up. That's why I thought rats.
Owls, but
Oh, yeah.
but they don't do it targeted as a revenge method, and why do they try to kill us when we're trying to feed them?
Why do they try to trip me in the middle of the night?
Exactly. Why do they scream at 3:00 in the morning? So anyway, the time has come for a cat-astrophic compilation.
Oh, God.
Okay, to be fair, in my first story, the cat isn't at fault. So this started with Brett Nash, a 46-year-old man living in Granite City, Illinois, which is tucked into the western side of the state near the Missouri border, and it's not far from St. Louis. And Nash had money problems. So in May of 2013, Nash came up, this is just cracking me up. In May of 2013, Nash came up with a money-making scheme that seriously has more moving parts than a game of mousetrap. He was working hard to solicit the help of his wife and another acquaintance to kidnap a local corporate lawyer, one who had lots of money in the bank, and to hold him for ransom. So nobody he was trying to solicit to help him was like, yes, let's do that. The wife recorded their conversations and turned them over to authorities. So what would be heard on these recordings? I mean, the police were just like, this is fucking bonkers. He believed that, first of all, he believed that the lawyer was interested in his wife. There was nothing I could find to prove or disprove that. But his wife certainly wasn't like, why, yes, he is hitting on me. His wife didn't weigh in on that one. So he wanted his wife to lure the man out of his house. Then Nash and his acquaintance were going to grab him, blindfold him, basically shove him in the trunk, kidnap him. Once they got him to a secure location, they would attach a fake explosive device to his person. Then they would force him, under threat of detonation, to withdraw $250,000 of his own money and turn it over to them. Then they would tell him that they were going to take him home and let him go as soon as they got the money. So this already sounds like a lot of work. This is not going from point A to point B. It is going to another planet.
The more complicated it is, the less likely it's going to work out.
But wait, there's more.
Well, wait.
The plan was to return the lawyer to his home and force him to get into a filled bathtub. Now, I couldn't find anything that says whether they planned to force him to undress first. That would make sense, but nothing else makes sense. So, because I'm like, well, anyway, it wouldn't work for their plan. So once the lawyer was submersed fully in the tub, they were going to toss in a plugged-in radio to kill him. Then they were going to catch his cat and lock it in the bathroom with him to make it appear as though the cat had accidentally killed its owner. I also read an alternative that they planned to kill the cat by actually throwing it in the tub with the radio to kill the cat and the lawyer. Yeah.
Why?
Killing them both, leading police to draw some the same false conclusion. On the same recording, Nash also discussed getting 2 identical guns to make it look like the lawyer had committed suicide. Because apparently he has never watched TV. Because there are so many forensic issues there. Even 2 identical guns are not with the ballistics. So at any rate, the wife turned him in before any of these plans could be carried out. And his ex-con acquaintance also ratted him out to his parole officer. Because this guy was out, he was obviously still on parole. And he was like, sounds good, buddy. He runs to his parole officer. Here's what this fucking nut wants to do. Investigators searching his house found a diagram of the intended victim's home, a backpack containing a ski mask, handcuffs, a compressed air pellet gun resembling a semi-automatic pistol, black socks and gloves, a flashlight, a plastic bag, and black hair dye. Nash was tried and sentenced to 20 years in prison, 3 years of supervised release following the imprisonment, and for some reason less than $1,000 in fines. I'm just like, okay, so he's not getting along with his wife, so he's trying to convince her to lure this guy out. Just so many things. So the next cat story takes place in, care to pick a state, any state?
Florida.
Yes. 2013 was a hell of a year for cats because the first one also took place in 2013. So in January in Orlando, or very close to Orlando, a 46-year-old woman named Lisa Frink got into an altercation with her boyfriend of 6 years over his food benefits card, which he refused to allow her to use. I should also point out, this happened at like midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning. It wasn't when one would normally go food shopping, which doesn't matter. She slashed her boyfriend several times with a knife, then fled into the backyard and into a shed. Her boyfriend called the police and said she was acting erratically. When the police arrived, they had a canine officer that they sent into the shed to subdue her. Crazy woman with a knife, let's send the dog in. Totally, I understand it, except Lisa picked up her cat and yeeted it at the dog. The cat, which was not accustomed to air flight, being airborne, latched on hard when it landed, which happened to be on the dog's face. So, right? It's like a Looney Tunes cartoon gone wrong. So once they got the dog out of the way, police officers went into the shed. This had to be a hell of a shed. Big shed. And cornered her. That's when she picked up some kind of concrete trowel or rake and started swinging at the officers. So a second dog was sent in. And this is what astounds me. It bit her twice before it brought her down.
Oh.
Yeah, so she was not in her right mind. She still resisted being handcuffed, so they had to use chemical spray to gain her compliance. She was, way out of it. Police later said that Frank had a medical condition and hadn't taken her meds that day. And that was actually also what her boyfriend had said when he called the police. She hasn't taken her meds. So she was still charged with attempted murder, aggravated battery, injuring a police dog, resisting arrest, and more.
Injuring a police dog with a cat.
Yeah. So, a more disturbing case. This is the case of Lori Ann Ocker. She was 19 years old, working for a pet store called The Pet Place in Susquehanna Valley Mall, which is located in the center of Pennsylvania, not really near much of anything. On May 24th of 1989, Ocker didn't show up for work, but her car was parked in the mall parking lot. So the first suspect is always the spouse or the ex-spouse. In this case, Robert Ocker and Lori Ann were divorced. They were fighting about custody of their son. Add to that, he had recently, what the fuck, people? Don't do this. He had recently taken out a big life insurance policy on her, even though they were divorced. She had told her family and her co-workers that she thought Robert was stalking her. So 3 weeks after her disappearance, and it was just boom, she just drove to work and never showed up. But 3 weeks after her disappearance, her body was found near a dirt road by a woman taking a walk, and dental records confirmed her identity. So Robert, the ex, had an alibi, but not a very strong one. He was seen detailing his car the afternoon that she went missing. So she went missing in the morning, this was later in the afternoon, and he sold the car 3 days later. Unlike what crime shows today would have you believe, in 1989, there weren't surveillance cameras everywhere. However, they lucked out because what did have surveillance cameras, and I believe still do, ATMs, bank teller machines. Yep. They all had cameras. So this one caught some interesting footage. A car that looks like Robert's pulls up in front of Lori Ann after she gets out of her car. Then the car drives on and you don't see her anymore. The tape that had the footage was very old and had been reused so many times that it was almost worn out. So they couldn't get the plates, but they definitively identified the car as an 83 or 84 Chevy Celebrity, which was what he drove. Once they tracked down the car, they were able to prove that this was the car in the video. However, hair similar to Lori Ann's was found in the trunk of the car. And I can only tell you what I read. Because decomp on the body was so advanced, a positive match couldn't be made. But
The trunk is hot.
yes. But remember, this is a piece about cats. So there were cat hairs found in the trunk that were an exact match for Lori-Ann's cats, proving that Lori-Ann and her cat hair covered clothing had been in the trunk of the car. And that was what led them to make that final connection. He was tried and convicted. He was originally sentenced to death, but that sentence was eventually changed to life in prison. And as of 2021, Robert was still residing in prison in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
That was the latest update. So I will throw a bone to all the dog lovers in the crowd. You're like, wish you could see the look I'm getting. Recently, and I'm talking mid-May of 2023, I don't know if you heard about this in the news or not. In southeastern Colorado, a man was pulled over on a Saturday night around 11:30 p.m. for suspicion of DUI. While the police officer was approaching the car, in full view of the police officer, the man switched places with his passenger, which was a dog. After the officer observed this, he asked the man to exit the vehicle. And the man fled from the passenger side, but was apprehended a few yards away. So apparently he was too inebriated to actually run away. I mean, can you imagine trying to convince anyone
The dog was driving.
the dog was driving?
I was drunk, officer, so I let my dog drive. Moron.
Yeah. My sources for this were the True Crime a Day calendar, which I love, top10s.net, the Riverfront Times newspaper, an article by Sam Levin, the Intelligencer newspaper, the Colorado Springs Gazette, Catholic.org, which has a Catterday segment, the History Channel website, and the website of George Pallas, Pallas.
Okay.
And I cannot, because I did this a few days ago, I can't remember which case he talked about.
Okay.
I think it was the murder. But I don't have any more credentials for him. I just know it was his website
Okay.
that had some of it. So,
Groovy.
yeah.
There we go. That was a somewhat lighter ending there. Well, the last one was certainly.
Yes. It was my dog driving. And all I could think of was the Saturday Night Live skit of Toonces, the driving cat.
Toonces, the driving cat.
That cracked me up every time.
God, so stupid.
Probably because I've always had tabbies that looked like Toonces.
Yeah. What was the Irish family that always drove off a cliff or whatever? It was like, oh, Bally's forever! And then they all drive off. I don't remember what it was. Because it was around the same time they were doing Toonces. I feel like the same cast or something.
I don't know.
They've blended together at this point.
Saturday Night Live has been on for a very long time.
It has, and there are large chunks of time I didn't watch it.
Yes.
I think I stopped after, like, the Chris Farley, David Spade, Adam Sandler.
And there have been some years that were just kind of blah.
Yeah. And now I just don't. I'm always doing something else. Like, as a teenager, it was one thing to be like, it's time for Saturday Night Live. I'm back in because it's my...
I record them and watch them later during the day. Although here they're on at, 10:35? It's not that late.
No. It's not.
So I could watch them right after Svengoolie.
You could.
But I'm usually going to bed by that time. I'm old.
Oh. All right.
Tired.
Old and tired. And on that note, we're going to be old and tired and close out this episode.
So welcome to season 6.
That's right. Thanks for sticking around
Yes.
to a 6th season. And we'll talk to you guys later.
Talk to you next week.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Mysteries, Monsters, and Mayhem.
Find us on Facebook and Instagram or at our website, mysteriesmonstersmayhem.com.
Please like, rate, and review, follow, and share wherever your favorite podcasts are downloaded.
Thank you for listening and supporting our podcast. We'll be back next week with more shenanigans.